Alright, now that we've modeled the arms and the legs, it is time to model the body. Alright, so again, we're just repeating the same process all the way through. I'm going to start with a cylinder, and I'm going to make this I'm going to make this 12. So now I've made my polycylinder, in this case 12. I know sooner or later I'm going to have to add extra geometry. That's why I'm doing it ahead of time. And then I'm going to go ahead and select all my faces and deselect these faces and delete the caps. Now I'm going to select my object, and same process we've been doing. I'm also only going to be following one side of my reference. And I'm going to stop at approximately the t-shirt bottom here. But in this case, because my arms are lifted and my shirt is lifted with my arms, I'm going to actually reference my shirt slightly lower here in this reference, in my side view reference. So I'm going to start it at the bottom of my shirt here. Okay? And it seems too low, and I can always change it later. So for visual reference, for visual purposes, I'm actually going to start here to make it be a little bit easier, hopefully, for everyone watching visually. So I'm going to take that back. I'm going to start I'm going to follow the reference in my front view. So I'm going to bring this down. Remember, I'm only worried about the left side of my mesh in this case. Either way, if you're modeling from the right side of your reference, is totally fine also. But now I'm going to go to my edge, select this edge, and bring this up. Again, just like the arms at the elbow and the knees down here, where we have at least 3 different edge loops going around, in the body we need to have quite a few edge loops because the body will deform, bend, twist, so on and so forth. So we need to make sure we have extra topology to compensate for that deformation that will be happening when we get into rigging this character. So I'm going to extrude again. I'm just working my way right up the mesh. Oop. I'm going to extrude, excuse me. Extrude. I'm going to work my way right up this mesh. And here it starts to sort of bow outwards over here. And we'll come right up. And then I'm going to expose it a little bit outward this way. And that should be pretty good. When I get to combining the arm, I may want to just delete this section of it when I combine these meshes. But for now, I'm going to leave it. And when we get into combining it, I will go ahead and show you how to do that later. We may have to delete some faces and so on and so forth. So I'm going to follow the topology that I have here, where I believe I'm going to, I may change it when I go ahead, but to combine them in a later video lab. But in this one, I'm going to keep them there for now, and I'm just going to follow this edge loop all the way through. And when we get to about this point, we can kind of, it doesn't matter too much because we're going to combine this into the arm and it's going to become the shoulder. And I'm not too concerned about it at the moment. So right now I'm going to go to my edge mode. Again, I'm going to scale only on my one axis, and I'm just going to move and shift these into place. Nothing too complicated. I'm double clicking my edge loops. Oops, I think I just ran an extrude, which I'm going to double check to make sure that I undid it. I'm going to go down to follow my reference here. And sure enough, I have one of those hidden extrudes that I did not do on purpose there. So I'm going to continue following my reference image. Bring this in slightly. And I'm just scaling on the one axis. And this top one I really don't need because this is actually starting to build into the neck for the time being. So once we get to about this point, we're going to stop. I'm going to soften edges and soften edge. And now I've got the start of my body in here. All right. So, with that being said, in the next video, we're going to go ahead and start modeling the foot next. Okay? So the next thing we'll model is the foot. Up to this point, we're pretty well set. We don't have to do too much here. This was a really simple part. One quick note, if you think your mesh is not symmetrical and you don't know how to fix it, and or you've gone too far to kind of restart this thing, I'm going to show you a quick trick. We learned this in Modeling 1. I'm going to go ahead and delete half of this model. The next thing you want to do is make sure that all your vertices, because sometimes that can happen, are all lined up. So use the scale tool on the one axis to scale them all correctly. Another cool trick, now this is getting into like a little bit of scripting, it's not complicated, just so I can show you, under this mel script here, if I do move dash X, that stands for move X axes, 0, semicolon, and enter on the numpad or control enter on your keyboard. What that does with your vertices that you have selected, you have to have something selected, is it will move these vertices all to perfectly X equals 0 basically. That's what that script basically does, that little piece of code, if you will. So move X 0 right here that I have highlighted. This will allow you to, anything that's highlighted, I typically only do it with vertices, and in this particular case only. And when I have half of my mesh here, I can press Control D, but I don't want to do that yet because I want to freeze my transformations, modify, freeze transformations. Now I'm going to press Control D, but also before I do that, in order for this to work properly, your pivot point needs to be on 0. The only way to do this one is hold D and X, and that will snap to the grid, and now it's directly on X equals 0. Now I can go ahead and duplicate, scale -1. I can combine these objects. We've done this in the 3D Modeling 1. Combine these objects using this, or mesh combine. Okay. Now, just because I've them combined does not mean that the vertices are merged, because it's not a closed object. I'm going to just run a click and drag over all of those. I'm going to hold Shift and right click, merge vertices, and merge vertices. And now I'm going to test it by pressing 3 to make sure everything looks good, and it does. And that is how you can run a symmetry on the body if you need to. Now, another thing I'm going to do is just, you see this crease here, and that's because this edge isn't soft anymore. I'm going to hold Shift right click, soften edge, and now that smooths that right out also. Alright, so now we've got the start of a halfway, it's a start to the silhouette basically of our character. Pressing 4 enters wireframe, 5 shaded, 6 is shaded with display, and 7 is with lighting. 7's a great tool without any lighting in the scene to read your silhouette, and if you're able to make out what it is. At this point, obviously it's not complete. There's parts that are unattached, but later on we'll come back to pressing 7 on the keyboard and we'll see what the silhouettes are starting to look like. Okay, so I'm going to go back into 5 mode because I don't have any textures on and I just want the shaded display on, and that's where we're at the moment in our character so far. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching, and if you have any questions, inbox me, and yeah, stay tuned for the next one, and see you soon.